Competing with Britain under current rules is financial suicide. The Ottoman capitulations cap import tariffs at a measly 8%. This forced free trade destroys local factories. If Egypt hikes taxes unilaterally, the British Royal Navy will sail into Alexandria port and blow up the city. The rulebook is rigid because Egypt is theoretically Ottoman territory, but laws have loopholes. Black Africa is the key. Places like Sudan are not covered by the Ottoman trade treaties. Egypt can enforce a total monopoly there. No foreign goods allowed. It is a guaranteed dumping ground for Egyptian industrial surplus. But Ismail needs immediate cash flow before conquering Africa. Anthony, we need a unique product, Ismail says, pulling out a paper-rolled cigarette. Anthony stares at the object. A cigarette? In Europe, high society uses pipes and cigars. Only beggars and sailors in Alexandria smoke these paper rolls. Anthony scoffs. Gentlemen love pipes, master. Why roll tobacco and sheet paper? Ismail grins. Pipes are luxury items. But who can carry a pipe during a grueling military march? Who has time to fill a bowl mid-battle? Cigarettes are fast, cheap, and disposable. Perfect for soldiers. Anthony's eyes light up. Genius? A cash cow. Europe produces textiles and machinery, but its cold climate cannot grow tobacco. Only the Balkans and parts of Spain manage it. This means Britain and France cannot copy Egyptian production. America grows tobacco, but its influence is stuck in the West. Spain has a massive premium cigar monopoly and won't waste time on cheap paper rolls. Egypt has an open field. Ismail plans to exploit the European revolutions of 1848. Millions of soldiers are fighting high-intensity campaigns in Central Europe and Italy. Austria is crushing Hungary. Sardinia is invading Milan. If these marching armies adopt cigarettes, the habit will spread across Europe when veterans return home. Brand loyalty will lock them to Egypt forever. 2 weeks later, Egypt's first cigarette machine is built near Cairo. Tech limitations are real. No steam power, no water power. It runs on raw human muscle, making a tiny 4 cigarettes per minute. Still, it beats global tech. The first automatic cigarette roller won't appear until the 1880s. A similar manual machine was just designed in Mexico, with identical low efficiency. Ismail retools 2 failing textile mills into cigarette factories. He orders a paper mill to print specialized packaging. The boxes feature camels, pyramids, and palm trees to scream exotic Egyptian mystery. The strategy is set, but distribution is a nightmare. Ismail cannot just mail a box to Austrian field marshals. They would mock him for acting like a common merchant. He needs an elite middleman with a solid European network. The Greeks in Egypt are perfect. Historical ties run deep. Ismail's grandfather, Muhammad Ali Pasha, was born in Kavala, Greece. Ismail's grandmother was Greek. Even though recent rebellions strained state relations with Athens, millions of Ottoman Greeks remain loyal traders in Istanbul, Syria, and Alexandria. Ismail sends Bered to the Greek hub in Alexandria to find a distributor. Bered knocks on a door in the rough Benra district. Inside lives Giorgio Kyriazino, a prominent local tobacco trader. Mamluk guards surround him. Giorgio, help the prince sell cigarettes or your business dies. Giorgio panics. He is used to dealing with street gangs, but he cannot fight the state. The tobacco industry is a government monopoly. Ismail can crush him with one memo to the Commerce Ministry. Free trade treaties only protect British merchants, not local Greeks. Bered steps in, acting like a savior. He yells at his guards to step back. Respect our foreign guests. Giorgio relaxes and orders coffee. Bered drops the real pitch. Help the prince. And Giorgio gets an exclusive 5-year monopoly on Egyptian tobacco distribution across the entire German Confederation. August 1848, Giorgio packs his bags and sails for Dalmatia. Following Ismail's direct orders, he heads straight to the war zone to pitch to General Josip Jelassic, the military commander fighting Hungarian rebels. The marketing campaign begins. Ismail cannot track his Greek distributor anymore. No way. Egypt has local telegraph lines between Cairo and Alexandria, but no underwater cables cross the Mediterranean yet. News travels slow. Ismail relies strictly on steamships docking at Alexandria to deliver European newspapers and letters. Inside the government building, said Pasha waves the latest Marseille Times. Ismail drops his agricultural files, Looking bored. Newspapers from Europe are already history by the time they hit Egypt. Not this one, said insists, flashing the front page. Look, the rebel workers in Paris built barricades. General Cavaignac National Guard crushed them on June 26. 10,000 killed, 4,000 exiled to Algiers. The June Days Uprising, a direct result of the 1847 economic crisis. The French provisional government had set up national workshops with minimum wages to help unemployed workers. Then the National Assembly dissolved them to save cash. The workers revolted. Ismail shrugs. Africa just gained 4,000 French speakers. Ismail despises the Turks. He refuses to speak Turkish, said cannot speak Arabic. The uncle and nephew communicate strictly in elite French, said frowns, remembering his student days in Paris. Watch your own factory workers, Ismail. If they grow too numerous, Cairo will look like a chaotic Parisian war zone, said loves Paris. The culture, the grand architecture, the high fashion. But he loathes narrow streets filled with barricades. He fears dirty, protesting workers. Ismail's mind goes somewhere completely different. 4,000 skilled industrial workers ships to Algiers at once. Incredible. He knows history won't stop there. Napoleon Roman III and the Third Republic will exile thousands more down the line. Worse, the French colonial government forces these factory tech experts to become farmers, fighting locals over dirt. Total waste of human resource. If Ismail could route those skilled hands to Egypt instead. September 1848. Paris, France. The presidential election is a tense mess. Louis Bonaparte, nephew of Napoleon I and future emperor, stays at the Hotel du Rhin near Place Vendôme. The Bonaparte family occupies 2 entire floors. Louis imagines a grand hero's welcome from the Parisian masses. Just like his uncle in 1815, he is dead wrong. Paris barely notices him. The wealthy bourgeoisie and landlords form the party of order to restore the monarchy. Republican elites back General Cavaignac. Petty bourgeoisie back Roland. Workers miss Louis Blanc. Nobody mentions Louis Bonaparte. The only plus? Nobody hates him either. He is just a blank slate. But Louis cannot win on the hatred alone. He has a dull build and zero charisma. He is a mediocre speaker with a bizarre Corsican Italian accent. In parliament, he barely speaks and rarely votes. He sits silently, pocketing his 25-franc daily stipend. Worse, rivals launch a vicious political attack. On October 9, the Grevy Amendment tries to ban former ruling families from running for president. Total ban. Louis delivers a pathetic, stuttering speech to defend himself. He only survives because royalist factions vote down the amendment to keep their own options open. The Bonapartists look finished. No money, no press, no public backing, nothing. After a disastrous campaign speech, Louis collapses onto his office sofa. I am a clown, he mutters. Without my uncle's glory, I am nothing. His secretary, Marquard, enters holding a letter with premium stamps. Well, an Egyptian prince still backs you, Bonaparte. Louis blinks. Ismail Pasha. He remembers meeting the giant Egyptian royal once. Robust, smart, highly educated, he spoke like a European university professor, not an African tribal ruler. He is Ibrahim's son, the future master of Egypt. They had traded grand flatteries before parting ways. But Louis never expected real help. Flattery is cheap. Marquard points to the envelope. The steamship docked at Marseille. This was rushed by fast horses. The premium stamps alone cost 400 francs. Louis opens the letter. No polite warm-up notes inside. Just a massive check for 20,000 British pounds. Cash. Solid gold funding for a broke candidate. Louis stares completely open-mouthed. He grabs the check. Marquard. Get this to Hortense immediately. Hortense runs his media campaign. Conservative press had been slaughtering Louis while praising Cavaignac. With this massive injection of Egyptian gold, journalists and editors will change their minds fast. Cash is king. Louis calms down and reads the paper. Rough texture. Definitely made in a new Egyptian mill. The French handwriting is elegant. To my dearest Charles Louis Bonaparte, I know your political grip will surpass your great uncle. You will win the presidency and make France great again. As your truest friend, I enclose 20,000 pounds for your campaign. I am also sending a local specialty, Pyramid brand cigarettes, a rising trend in Egypt, far superior to cigars. Louis looks up. What are Pyramid cigarettes? Marquard pulls out a colorful cardboard box featuring a camel, pyramids, and palm trees. The mailman delivered these alongside the letter, sir. Louis sets the box aside to read the climax of the letter. My request is simple. Once you restore the glory of France, allow those French exiles to live and work in Egypt. Their presence will secure an unbreakable bond between our nations. Furthermore, I demand the release of Abdelkader. He must be allowed to serve Egypt. Abdelkader, the legendary rebel leader of Algiers. General Soult once claimed that only 3 men truly achieved greatness after Napoleon: Muhammad Ali Pasha, Abdelkader, and Imam Shamil. True titans. Kadir's guerrilla warfare ran 100,000 French troops ragged in Algiers. Massive casualties. France only won by using overwhelming numbers and absolute tech advantage to crush him. Southeast of Alexandria, a naval monster sails across the Aboukir Bay. The battleship Mears glides through the waves, flying the star and crescent flag. Built in Alexandria in 1832, it features 4 massive decks and 136 cannons. True pride of Egypt. Napoleon's old flagship, Orient, would look like a tiny toy next to it. Only a couple of ships globally outclass its tonnage. 2 other massive ships, Acre and Holmes, sail alongside it, packed with 100 cannons each. Said Pasha stands proud at the bow of the Mears. He wears a flawless Grand Admiral uniform, eyes closed. The salty, cool wind hits his face. Waves crash against the hull. Splash. Look at this fleet, Ismail. Discipline, power. In a few years, we will challenge the Ottoman Empire again. Ismail stands next to him, rolling his eyes. If we challenge the Ottomans, we fight the British Royal Navy, not the Turks. Ismail cannot understand this obsession. Said and Suleiman both want a death match with Istanbul. The Turks are weak, yes, but Britain backs them. The Egyptian Navy would get obliterated by a single British squadron. If they want to expand, they should bully weaker targets. Spain or the Netherlands. Spanish defenses in Southeast Asia are a joke. If Egypt attacks, local Muslim sultanates like Asay and Maguindanao will instantly rise up to back them. But Ismail keeps his mouth shut. Said's brain was molded by his French mentor, Ferdinand de Lesseps. If Ismail brings up Asia, Said will just lecture him about building the Suez Canal. He wants to help France attack India while Egypt seizes the Philippines. Total madness. Egypt's economy cannot fund a massive engineering project like the canal. Worse, the greedy British will just march in and steal it later. Said sighs, his fantasy ruined. You are a jokel, Ismail, just like old Muhammad Ali Pasha. Then, a smirk hits Said's face. Time to push back. Why do you back Louis Bonaparte so confidently anyway? The newspapers show his polls hitting rock bottom. Nobody likes him. Said frowns. If Cavaignac wins the presidency and finds out we funded Bonaparte, France and the Ottomans will team up to kick us out of Egypt. Cultural colonialism is real. France rules Egypt's mind. Right now, with Muhammad Ali senile and Ibrahim dying, Cairo is a mess. The foreign powers hold all the cards. Ismail already angered the British merchant Robert. He cannot afford to piss off France too. Ismail knows history. Bonaparte will win. He just needs to educate his uncle. Polls? Where do you think those newspaper polls come from, uncle? Said scratches his head. Well, French papers print questionnaires. Subscribers mail them back. That's how they count, right? Exactly, Ismail smirks. And who actually has the time and money to mail back a newspaper questionnaire? Government clerks, teachers, lawyers, Said answers confidently. The middle class and wealthy shopkeepers. Right, Ismail nods. But the vast majority of France's 8 million voters don't read papers. They are illiterate peasants living in the countryside. Cavaignac's media monopoly cannot reach them. Ismail leans in. But Napoleonic veterans live in those villages. They tell grand stories of the emperor's conquest. They worship Napoleon. Imagine an uneducated peasant walking into a voting booth. He sees the name Bonaparte alongside total strangers like Cavaignac and Roland. Who does he pick? Said blinks. Louis Bonaparte. Exactly, Ismail continues. And the city folk will vote for him too. The royalist factions hate each other, so they will pick Bonaparte as a compromise. The workers hate Cavaignac for crushing their uprising, so they will pick Bonaparte out of spite. Even the Republicans fear Cavaignac will launch a military coup, while Bonaparte looks harmless and safe. Ismail's logic is flawless. But Said has one last doubt. Cavaignac controls the army. What if he uses brute force to stop the election? Ismail smiles coldly. The high-ranking officers might back Cavaignac, but the raw soldiers worship Napoleon. If Kavainek tries a military coup, his own troops will cut off his head and kick it like a football. He pats Ed's shoulder. Relax, uncle. Louis Bonaparte will win, and he will owe us. Meanwhile, in Alexandria, a red brick luxury mansion sits behind massive stone walls. High-end fountains and lush gardens fill the space. The iron gates stay shut, completely closed to local poor Egyptians. Passers-by might look with disgust, thinking it belongs to a corrupt local official. Then they see the Union Jack flying high. Absolute respect follows. This is the British consulate. British gentlemen stroll through the Egyptian heat wearing thick wool coats and top hats. They want everyone to know they are elite citizens of the global superpower. Even a broke British beggar becomes a god in the colonies. They enjoy massive tax exemptions and diplomatic immunity. Local corrupt cops cannot touch them. If they commit a crime, local laws mean nothing. Only the British court can judge their fate. Absolute privilege. Cruel, but regal. If an African chief or a Japanese daimyo offends a British citizen, the Royal Navy blows them off the map. Complete destruction. If an Indian prince or a Malay chief harms a British subject, their territory vanishes from global maps entirely. Unbelievable. Because of this, British subjects walk the earth with absolute pride. They have a terrifying superpower backing them. Robert, the import-export trader, is one of these arrogant British subjects. He drags his obese body out of a carriage, clumsily missing his footing. He tilts wildly, almost crashing onto the dirt. A thin Egyptian servant in a clean white suit rushes over, bracing the fat merchant with his own frail body. The servant stands there, sweating, waiting for a tip. Whack! Robert cracks him across the skull with his heavy walking cane. Filthy Egyptian, how dare you touch my body? Robert snarls. The servant collapses onto the dirt. Robert huffs, feeling satisfied, and marches into the British consulate. The guards recognize him and pull open the heavy iron gates. Robert glances at the red-coated soldiers holding rifles. A deep sense of security washes over him. As long as these troops stand here, he will never lose a fight against locals. The consul general is in a meeting. Please wait, the secretary says outside the office. Robert sits on a long wooden bench, sipping premium green tea imported from China. Before the tea even cools, the heavy office door clicks open. Two young British ladies walk out, gossiping about using the consul's influence to smuggle ancient Egyptian artifacts out of the country. Robert stares. The local heat must be getting to them. Their shoulder-bearing dresses are scandalous. Short sleeves, short skirts. Their ankles are completely exposed. Ouch! If they were his daughters, he would scream at them right there. Stop staring, Robert. Get in here, a voice calls from the office. This is Sir Charles Murray, British Consul General to Egypt. A seasoned diplomat and a famous travel writer, Robert worships the man's talent. He once ordered 500 copies of Murray's travels in North America at a staggering £5 per book. Heavy flattery. Robert slides into a chair, completely familiar with the space. He gets straight to the point. We almost broke Ismail's factories, Sir Charles, but General Suleiman Pasha and the governor of Khartoum are still buying his gear. This violates our free trade treaties. The London Convention forced Mohammed Ali Pasha to abandon all state monopolies. But while locals can technically buy and sell freely, the state still controls the military and government purchasing. They force the army to buy EGYPTIAN Chinese letter. This builds a protected domestic market, bypassing low foreign tariffs. Murray scoffs. What do you want me to do, Robert? Send agents into the barracks to ask every raw soldier if they bought local gear voluntarily? Stop Ismail from becoming governor, Robert whispers, his eyes turning cold and vicious. Ismail doesn't even hold total power yet, but his industrial reforms are already moving fast. If he takes the throne and forces the entire noble elite to buy local, Britain loses a massive market instantly. Not realistic, Murray says calmly. You buy my books, Robert, but deciding the next ruler of Egypt is way above our pay grade. Why? Robert demands. Murray sighs. If we block Ismail, who do we get? Abbas or Said? They both have massive conflicts of interest with us. Ismail is the least bad option. Abbas is a hardcore conservative. If he rules, he will restrict foreign trade and seal the country, damaging British economic interests. Said is a reformist who thinks Egypt should just export cotton and import everything else. On paper, he is perfect for British textiles. But Said has a fatal flaw. He is a spiritual Frenchman. If Said takes power, Egypt throws its doors open to Paris. He will let France build the Suez Canal, giving French warships a direct shot from the Mediterranean to India. The East India Company will face a massive security nightmare. Ismail is different. He craves absolute independence. He won't become a puppet for France or the Ottomans. His industrial dream might hurt local import agents like Robert, but it means nothing to the global British Empire. British factories export to the West Indies, India, America, and Russia. Losing a tiny market like Egypt doesn't matter. In fact, Ismail's factories will need to buy heavy British machinery anyway. Ismail is far more dangerous than Said or Abbas. Robert spits furiously. He is trying to unite the Egyptian people. If he succeeds, how will the British Empire manage a unified Egypt? Robert knows Ismail is spending massive fortunes on grassroots propaganda. Other nobles treat locals like ants. They view themselves as elite Albanians or Turks ruling over a conquered race. Just like the Qing dynasty in China, the people don't know the state, and the state doesn't care about the people. Brutal. But if Ismail glues them together, Europe faces a serious threat. Sir Charles Murray doesn't care. Literacy is low. Ismail's propaganda will take decades to work. By then, Murray's diplomatic term will be long over. He only cares about his current orders from the Prime Minister. That is a future problem, Robert. Murray shakes his head. Lord Russell's Near East policy has shifted away from crushing Egypt. Murray stands up, walking over to a cabinet filled with painted ancient pottery. He pulls out a folded copy of the Near East Times. He drops it in front of the merchant. Look how grim the situation is. Robert opens the paper. The front page screams about Austria crushing the Vienna Rebellion. Then he sees what Murray wanted him to see. July 14. Russian troops cross into Moldavia under the guise of stopping unrest. Reliable sources claim they will soon march into Wallachia to crush the revolution. Those are Ottoman vassal states. Lord Russell and Lord Palmerston are terrified of Russia's ambitions in the Balkans. Murray explains, the weak Ottoman Empire cannot stop the Russian army alone. Right now, a strong Egypt is useful to us, as long as they don't side with Russia or France. I don't understand diplomacy, Robert mutters, looking dejected. You are the consul. You should protect our profits. Murray's voice rises. I have an opportunity for you to make a fortune. It will also test Ismail's attitude toward the British Empire. Robert's eyes light up. What is it? The Suez Railway, Murray whispers mysteriously. Meanwhile, after attending Said's grand naval parade, Ismail stays in Alexandria. He checks into the Ras El Tin Palace. A gorgeous Royal Chinese letter. Alexandria is highly international. The palace reflects this, looking far more westernized than Al-Walid in Cairo. The main structure features a grand Italian Renaissance style, while the interior blends French Baroque with exotic, Oriental Moorish designs. Beautiful, exotic. The stage is set for a high-stakes diplomatic chess game. The luxury Ras El Tin Palace is surrounded by 12 feet of exquisite gardens. High class. But walking through the halls makes Ismail deeply uncomfortable. In the future, King Farouk will be forced to abdicate by free officers right here. A barefoot, dark-skinned servant rushes over to Ismail. Your Highness, a British man named Robert wants to see you. Ismail frowns. That merchant? He detests the fat trader. Fine, let him in. Robert walks in, smiling broadly. He bows deeply. Following his usual routine, he brings a gift. Not a kaleidoscope this time. It is a model steam locomotive. He pours in water and kerosene, lights it up, and tiny puffs of steam rise from the miniature chimney. Ismail looks cold. I have seen real trains before. Robert flatters him instantly. I know your excellent mind saw them in France, Your Highness. But do you want to see a real train moving across Egypt? Egypt has 0 miles of railway. Ismail always found it strange. His grandfather built dozens of factories, but completely ignored rail transport. Yet, building a network now isn't too late. Imperial Russia won't even link Moscow and St. Petersburg until 1851. Ismail ponders. If you want to sell steel rails and locomotives to Egypt, we can talk. Egypt cannot manufacture heavy iron tracks or steam engines yet. They must buy from Europe. Who cares if the seller is British? No, Your Highness, Robert says excitedly. I am talking about a massive railway concession linking the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. A truly grand enterprise. Ismail's interest peaks. Crossing the scorching desert between Suez and the sea by camel takes 5 grueling days. Bedouin raids are a constant threat. Worse, pack animals cannot carry mass industrial cargo. A railway cuts that down to a few hours. Absolute convenience. Of course, a railway is less efficient than a shipping canal, but digging a Suez Canal demands massive labor and gold. The weak Egyptian state would break. A railway is much cheaper. However, cheaper doesn't mean free. Egypt is broke. Decades of heavy warfare left the government with 2.4 million of internal debt by 1844. The military, navy, and schools are starving for cash. Ismail's private wealth is a drop in the bucket for public infrastructure. Plus, his failing factories and Barad's massive propaganda bureau chew through cash every day. Ismail sighs. I back the railway idea, Robert. But Egypt's treasury is completely bone dry. Robert grins. Money is zero issue, Your Highness. Queen Victoria's loyal subjects will fund the entire project. Ismail grows suspicious. A silver tongue always hides a trap. British aid is just honey-coated poison. In history, General Mir Jafar took British help in 1757 to overthrow his master in Bengal, only to become a puppet. Funded how? Ismail asks. Robert breaks it down. Egypt pays VO cash. The Suez Canal Project Company and the Peninsular and Oriental Steam Navigation Company will raise gold on the London bond market. The Suez Company is a nest of vipers. British, French, and Austrian merchants are all plotting against each other. The British only want a railway. They fear a shipping canal will ruin South Africa's Cape of Good Hope trade route. France desperately wants a canal to bypass British-controlled Gibraltar. Austria wants a canal to bring booming wealth back to Venetian trade hubs under their control. Meanwhile, the Peninsular and Oriental Company is a massive shipping titan run by the East India Company. Their mail routes cover Gibraltar to Alexandria, Suez to Bombay, and stretch all the way to Singapore, Hong Kong, and New Zealand. Terrifying influence. These giants do not offer free lunches. Ismail plays along. That sounds excellent. Yes. Egypt does nothing and gets a free railway. Robert pauses, his eyes narrowing. However, Ismail waits. The real punchline always comes after the word however. However, Egyptians lack the technical skills to run a modern railway, Robert smirks. Our British company and British engineers must hold absolute management control. Classic British Empire playbook. Ismail knows the routine. Once London controls the tracks, Egyptian sovereignty becomes a joke. British agents will use the rail rights to survey local minerals, dump cheap goods, and manufacture excuses. If a local Bedouin steals a piece of rail, London will scream sabotage and march British troops in to garrison the entire route. Then comes total annexation. But Ismail has his own plan. Eat the sweet coating, spit the bullet back at them. It is free infrastructure on Egyptian soil. He will co-opt it. Technical skill is indeed a bottleneck, Ismail says, looking totally satisfied, but faking a slight worry. But I don't rule alone. I must consult the cabinet. If the Conservatives block it, Robert leans in. If you push this project through, Sir Charles Murray, our Consul General, will back your claim to the throne. Meanwhile, a grand feast begins inside a lavish Alexandria palace. The host is Muharrem Bey. Born in Greece, he became Muhammad Ali Pasha's adopted son and right-hand man. He commanded the joint Ottoman-Egyptian fleet at the bloody Battle of Navarino against Britain, France, and Russia. Now, he is the governor of Alexandria. I am old and useless now, Muharrem Bey says, slamming down a cup of aloe juice. The future belongs to you young bloods. Muharrem Bey is 60. Said Pasha is only in his 20s. The old Pasha had many wives and slave girls, so an extreme age gap between brothers is completely normal. Said raises his cup high to toast his brother. The Navy still needs your experienced guidance, brother. He pretends to drink, but when he lowers the cup, the aloe juice is barely touched. Sneaky. Muharrem Bey rambles on. He complains about managing Alexandria's booming growth. Worse, foreign merchants are acting completely above the law, using their consuls as shields. As the old man chatters with other elites, Said seizes the moment. He grabs Ismail's arm and pulls him away from the crowd of Western suits and Turkish robes. They slip into a tiny, simple room. Several reformist nobles sit inside, their red fez hats resting on a table. They are waiting anxiously. Ismail blinks. What is going on here? Said rolls his eyes. muttering under his breath. Muharrem Bey is an stubborn old fool. He sees absolutely nothing. Ismail stares. Now he is completely confused. What are they plotting? A secret door clicks open. Dark, deep. Behind it stand rows of neatly stacked oak barrels. Said grins, pointing at the casks. Premium Bordeaux wine. One sip makes your French sound flawless. The Western-suited nobles scramble to pour the liquor. Everyone toasts. Said gulps down his drink, ready to party until sunrise. Knock, knock, knock. Pasha, Pasha, someone is looking for you. A frantic voice yells. Said freezes, his wine glass hovering in midair. Drinking alcohol is forbidden. Even the Ottoman caliph got fatty liver from booze, so it's not a lethal scandal. But listening to conservative scolding is worse than death. Ismail is completely sober. He opens the door. A sharp young clerk stands outside, gasping for breath. Governor Muharrem Bey has a crisis at the port. He cannot decide. Only you can handle this. Alexandria port. High-end customs warehouses are packed with raw exports. Cotton, sugar, buffalo hides, standard colony goods. But tucked away in a remote warehouse, things are different. Ancient Egyptian pottery, statues, and papyrus sheets sit in crates. They are ready to be shipped out to the British Museum or private collections of wealthy London elites. Luckily, a sharp customs inspector noticed. He slapped a heavy sealed label across the crates. How dare you seize the private property of British subjects? A sharp female voice screams. It sounds like a rusty blade scratching glass. Did you Egyptians forget the terror of Admiral Napier so quickly? The local police shrink back, whispering anxiously. 8 years ago, Napier's British fleet pointed their massive cannons straight at Alexandria. One order from London would have turned the city into a sea of fire. Foreigners are dangerous. Foreign women are worse. Best to avoid them. Suddenly, Muharrem Bey and Ismail step into the warehouse. The police snap to attention, saluting wildly. Ismail looks around. What is the problem here? A young cop steps forward slowly. Customs seized ancient relics from 2 British ladies. They are demanding to ship them to London. The British again. In a semi-colonial state, foreign involvement makes everything a nightmare. Right at that moment, a luxury carriage rolls into the customs yard. Sir Charles Murray steps out, surrounded by secretaries. Murray tips his hat to Ismail. Prince Ismail, a pleasure. Our massive railway deal is at a critical stage. A scandal right now would be bad for business, wouldn't you say? Ismail narrows his eyes. He realizes Murray is the real mastermind behind Robert's railway pitch. But business is just business. Ismail stays firm. Sir Charles, business is business. Sovereignty is sovereignty. You should understand that. This isn't business. The sharp-voiced woman shrieks. This is our private property. We dug these out of Luxor ourselves. Margaret, hush. Let the consul handle the diplomacy. A softer, more mature woman whispers. Ismail looks at them. 2 elite British ladies under silk parasols, fancy laced dresses, flawless white skin. They haven't spent a single second digging in muddy ruins. Ismail scoffs openly. Dug them yourselves? Or did you use British pounds to buy them from local grave robbers? The ladies flush crimson. Awkward silence fills the room. Murray breaks the tension, sounding completely self-righteous. It is the same as the railway. Egypt needs British management. Your history needs our management too. Modern Egyptians cannot read hieroglyphs. You don't know your own past. Letting these relics rot in the Nile mud is a crime against science. Europe must preserve them. Pure sophistry. Imperial thieves always use research as an excuse to plunder. A century later, when a nation develops and asks for its heritage back, Europe will just claim private property is sacred. No way out. Ismail glares at the consul. How do you know Egyptians cannot read the ancient texts? We hold absolute authority over our own history. He orders the relics confiscated. Later, said sighs deeply. That was unwise, Ismail. Egypt must align with global standards. Said backs the export of relics. Since the days of Mohammed Ali Pasha, the state has welcomed foreign archaeologists to look progressive. French scholar Champollion even cracked the hieroglyphic code here. Local officials usually look the other way to secure European friendships. Back in 821, King Friedrich Wilhelm Roman III of Prussia sent a massive team down the Nile. They plundered over 15,000 artifacts. The old Pasha even gave them free forced labor to help move the crates. Ismail turns to his uncle. We gave Prussia 15,000 treasures. Did they respect us? No. During the war, they backed the Sultan against us. Global diplomacy runs on raw power, not gifts. Sid stammers, completely speechless. But only Europeans care about this old stuff. If we don't sell to them, who buys it? Locals view ancient Egypt as a pagan era, not their true history. Interest is zero. Ismail grins. For now, yes. But we don't give them away for free. We will gather them into a national museum. We can cash in on Europe's Egypt mania with touring exhibits, or force tourists to travel here. Sid nods reluctantly. There is one local scholar who cares, Tatawi. He runs a language school in Cairo. He can help you. I will visit him, Ismail says, but I must wait for news from our Greek cigarette merchant first. Unexpectedly, Ismail packs his bags for Cairo the next morning. A red alert telegram arrived. Ibrahim Pasha is dying. September 848. The regent's body is completely broken. Tuberculosis is tearing his lungs apart. Heavy coughing. Blood splatters. Now, epilepsy brings violent seizures and dark hallucinations. Servants whisper that death is in the room. Ismail rushes down the Nile via steamship. He bursts into the Cairo palace. A crowd surrounds the bedroom. An old royal servant whispers to Ismail. The master is suddenly clear-headed. No coughing. No crazy talk. The final rally. The candle flickers brightly before dying. Ismail pushes through the weeping crowd. Ibrahim is sitting up with help from servants. He looks dry, thin, and skeletal, but his eyes are sharp. Death is waiting. Ismail, Ibrahim calls out. His voice is surprisingly full of energy. Every eye in the crowded bedroom snaps directly to Ismail. Nobles and higher-ranking officials stand frozen in their lavish garments. Ibrahim looks at the crowd. He speaks with absolute majesty. I have observed you since your return. You are the only one fit to rule this nation. He turns his fierce gaze to the standing elites. He drops the ultimate question. He should be the next heir instead of Abbas, correct? Silence. Total gridlock. Nobody dares to blink. The elite look down, staring intensely at the floorboards. Fear is thick in the air. If they oppose Ibrahim now, he will hang them outside the palace gates. But if the old, senile Muhammad Ali Pasha suddenly wakes up and backs Abbas, they are doomed anyway. No way out. I support Ismail. A booming voice breaks the silence. Everyone turns. It is Suleiman Pasha, his hair and beard bone white. He steps forward. Ismail builds the best weapons in the world. What has Abbas done? He just hides in dark corners, insulting us loyal foreigners. Suleiman speaks without fear. He is French. He can always flee back to Paris if things turn bloody. Safe. His sudden declaration breaks the dam. Support floods in for Ismail. A heavy, muscular man steps forward, grabbing Ismail's hand. Ismail helped the treasury cut massive industrial subsidies. I back him. This is Bazi Bey, the finance director. Another gentleman with glasses smiles. Ismail speaks flawless French. He is close with Louis Bonaparte and friendly with the British. Egypt needs a diplomat. This is Sami Bey, the foreign minister. Ibrahim nods. Settled. He orders a scribe to bring paper and ink immediately. He writes his final will. He names Ismail the new regent of Egypt. Then he forces every noble to step up and swear absolute loyalty to the boy. The ceremony drags on for over an hour. Ibrahim's energy begins to fade. Death is pulling him down. He looks at Ismail, whispering his final fantasy. When I am gone, capture Constantinople. That is my only wish. Ismail refuses to lie to a dying man. He shakes his head. I cannot, father. That will anger Britain and Russia. Ibrahim sags. Then restore the Arab Empire. Rule from Maghreb to Khorasan. I cannot, Ismail whispers. That will offend Britain and France. Ibrahim sinks into his pillows, his jaw working silently. Disappointment. Ismail catches his hand, tears streaming down his face. But my borders will march south along the Nile, all the way to the ends of the White and Blue Nile. Africa will belong to Egypt. Ibrahim's eyes open slightly. Yes, Africa. Our own 13 colonies. Our Louisiana. Endless opportunity. Dark memories flash through the dying man's mind. He remembers Navarino, where the European fleets burned his ships to ash. He remembers Syria, where the great powers forced him to sign the treaty. He hates Europe. Absolute bitterness. He uses his last ounce of strength to squeeze Ismail's hand. He gasps out his final, twisted advice. Spread discord among the Europeans, Ismail. Make them hate each other. Incite them to burn their fields, kill their students, and bleed for fake glory. While they fight, we will drain the wealth of the Nile. By the time they look up, Egypt will hold all the gold and knowledge. Ibrahim takes his last breath. He goes cold. In his dead hand, he leaves a final military order. It commands the army to launch an immediate coup and execute Abbas. Said Pasha reads the letter and sighs. Your father was desperate. This is reckless. Ismail looks at him. Why? Abbas is the inspector general of the army, Said explains. The old Albanian and Turkish factions back him. If we move troops openly, he will notice. He will flee to the Ottomans for protection. Abbas is a hardcore conservative puppet for Istanbul. The Sultan loves him. Then we strike fast, Ismail says coldly. In assassination, the funeral procession fills the wide streets of Cairo. Endless masses line the roads, dead quiet. Even the British, Ottoman, and Greek consulates lower their flags to half-mast out of respect for the great general. Almost every royal official attends the burial. Only 2 are missing. Old Muhammad Ali Pasha is too senile to understand his son is dead. Abbas refuses to come because of an ancient family blood feud. A corrupt eunuch sneaks up to the royal circle, his turban stuffed with heavy bags of cash. He whispers in a sharp, high voice, Abbas called your father a dead French dog. I swear he said it the moment he heard the news. Fury explodes. Ismail's eyes turn blood red with hatred. My father is not even cold, and Abbas spits on his memory. He must pay. The crowd ignites. Anger ripples through the mourners. Suleiman Pasha steps forward, his voice steady but lethal. Every decent man must oppose this insult. Said's voice shakes. Send the monster to hell. Drag him to justice. A rational noble shouts. Beat him to death. Kill him now. The angry mob screams. Ismail raises his fist. He marches straight toward Abbas's mansion. Hundreds of armed nobles and guards follow him, looking like a roaring wave. A few street cops try to block the road. They look at the sheer wealth and power of the angry mob. They step back and vanish into the alleys. Defending Abbas isn't worth a bullet to the brain. Smart. Within minutes, the roaring crowd surrounds Abbas's luxury estate. Ismail turns to Barad, who just rushed back from the cemetery. All of Ibrahim's elite Mamluk guards now belong to Ismail. Take half the men, Ismail orders grimly. Lock down the back and side doors. No way out. When the armed wave of soldiers and Mamluk storms into Abbas Pasha's luxury mansion, the ending is already written. Half an hour later, a heavy, obese corpse covered in bloody bullet holes is dragged straight to Ismail. Everyone recognizes him. Abbas is dead. Ismail instantly screams with fake horror. Who murdered my cousin? I only wanted him to apologize. A Mamluk steps forward, looking completely innocent. He was climbing over the back wall. Master. A stray bullet hit him. He dropped like a stone. Investigate this immediately. Ismail roars, hiding his face inside the baggy sleeve of his Arabic robe. He pretends to weep hysterically over losing his dear cousin. Sneaky. Absolute acting. Right at that moment, pop. A champagne cork flies through the air. Fizzing liquid splashes into crystal glasses. Said Pasha smiles broadly, holding his glass high. Today, the obstacle to our nation's progress is completely wiped out. Tomorrow, Prince Ismail officially becomes the regent. Toast. Cheers. The crowd yells in elite French. The party turns wild. Western-suited, wine-drinking reformists celebrate like crazy. They finally defeated the sober, Turkish-robed old guard. Albanian, Turkish, Greek, and Georgian nobles swarm Ismail, offering grand flatteries and luxury gifts. Ismail gets red-faced from the wine, feeling a sudden surge of absolute dominance. From now on, Egypt belongs to us, he boasts to the crowd. Said leans in close. Yes, nephew, but don't forget to take care of the loyal friends who marched with you. The words instantly sober Ismail up. Reality check. He needs to reward his reformist followers, especially Said. According to old laws, Said should have ruled next because he is older. Ismail taking the throne was pure favoritism from his dying father. Yet, Said didn't mutiny, he backed the coup. He deserves a massive reward. But Said has a clear ceiling. He is lazy, gullible, and easily manipulated. Leaving him as Grand Admiral of the Navy is safe. Any higher political office, and he will completely break the gears. In fact, Ismail trusts his uncle precisely because the man is incompetent. A smart, ambitious uncle is a death threat. So how do you reward a lazy, spiritedly French prince? Land and gold. Said loves Paris fashion and expensive luxuries. He is drowning in debt. He needs serious cash. In this era, land is the safest asset on earth. Industrial profits fluctuate wildly, but farm rents stay fixed year after year. Landlords just hire thugs to collect cash and accountants to count it. Zero effort. Total profit. Egypt is even better than Europe. The fertile Nile soil acts like the American South. Landowners grow high-value economic crops like cotton, sugar, and tobacco. They build processing mills right next to the fields to double their fortunes. Giving his supporters massive estates is the perfect reward, but high-profit plantations hide a dark side. Forced labor. In America, it is slavery. In Egypt, it is the landlord's power to force local peasants into labor. Culturally, there is no legal serfdom here, but Turkish nobles use political muscle to lock farmers to the soil anyway. Ismail sees the dangerous trap. If he hands huge estates to the nobles, they will turn into American southern planters. They will hoard valuable labor, starving his urban factories. Worse, they will lobby the state for low import tariffs to ease their agricultural exports, destroying his industrial protection laws. No way out. The next morning, Ismail steps into the grand hall for his first day as regent. Every mid to high-level bureaucrat stands packed in lines, desperate for a handshake. This is their only shot to show their faces. Ismail smiles, shakes hands, and immediately drops a massive bombshell. Administrative restructuring. Out with the old guard, in with his loyal crew. First up, the late Abbas's old job as Inspector General of the Army goes straight to Field Marshal Ismail Pasha. Traditionalists grumble. Suleiman is a converted Frenchman. Giving a foreigner the army keys looks scandalous. But Ismail knows the future. Under Said and Ismail, Egypt will go completely foreign crazy. They will hire British and French engineers for ministries and recruit American Civil War veterans to lead troops. Hiring foreign experts brings top-tier Western tech and ideas. But the downsides are massive. Foreigners always put their motherland first when things get critical. Take General Gordon, the future governor of Khartoum. He will serve British imperial interests over Egypt every single time. Worse, packing multiple nationalities into one military causes pure chaos. By 1870, American Union and Confederate veterans hired by Egypt will launch a chaotic shootout against each other right on the streets of Alexandria port. Silly. Language is another nightmare. Commands must be translated from English and French to Albanian, Turkish, and Arabic. Going to war with a multilingual military is a complete cluster, worse than the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Still, Egypt has zero local research power. Ismail needs foreign brains to kickstart his industrial dream. He will use them, but keep them on a tight leash. The real battle for the Nile begins now. To minimize conflict, Ismail decides to hire only Frenchmen as foreign advisors and military officers. This avoids mixed loyalties and messy global rivalries. Right after naming Ismail Pasha the top general, Ismail drops his next big move. He creates a brand new propaganda ministry. He names Bared the minister. Bared was the first Mamluk to serve him, his oldest ally since his return from France. Promoting him sends a loud message to the court. Loyalty brings massive rewards. Plus, a propaganda bureau is a powerful weapon. It must be controlled by a blindly loyal watchdog, with no room for error. For other departments, Ismail keeps the old guard from his grandfather's era. These veterans have massive administrative experience and deep, historical ties to the Alawi royal family. Their loyalty is secure. For instance, the new Minister of War, Ahmed Yakin, is old Muhammad Ali Pasha's nephew, making him Ismail's uncle. The finance minister, Bazi Bey, was once the old Pasha's personal slave. On paper, Egypt has a modern bureaucratic system. In reality, it is absolute, centralized autocracy. The governor sends his family, friends, and personal slaves to control every gear of the state, forcing the machinery to serve his private interests. Modern, independent civil servants won't appear until the late 1860s. This nepotism looks outdated and primitive, but it hides a massive advantage. Power is totally centralized. No annoying bureaucrats can hide in the system to stall, bicker, or block executive orders. This gives Ismail an open field for rapid reform. Today is my first day as regent, Ismail announces from his throne. Time to launch our new reforms. The hall erupts in murmurs. Elite officials near the throne look solemn and pensive. The minor clerks in the back whisper frantically. Usually, a new ruler plays it safe early on, rewarding backers before making big waves. If a ruler moves too fast without a solid foundation, the elite will overthrow him. Just look at the pro-German Peter Roman III of Russia or Sultan Osman Roman II, who got his throat slit by his own guard. You need years on the throne or a massive private army to launch risky reforms. But Ismail cannot wait. He needs to secure noble backing instantly while aligning with his own industrial vision. He locks eyes with the crowd. From this day on, Egypt recognizes private land ownership. Your property rights are fully protected by law. No one can confiscate your fields. The words hit the room like a lightning bolt. What? A Mamluk shouts, forgetting court etiquette. What? A senior clerk gasps, utterly incredulous. What? A powerful noble yells, looking absolutely ecstatic. A tidal wave of shouting drowns out the hall. Silence! Silence! The royal master of ceremonies bellows. The room calms down slightly, but the furious whispering never stops. This land reform changes the entire face of the Egyptian economy and social hierarchy. Before Ismail's coup, private land ownership didn't legally exist. In theory, the governor owned every inch of soil, forcing peasants to farm whatever crop the state demanded. In reality, one man cannot micromanage 4 million people. Ismail knows he can't do it either, even with his modern future knowledge. Tech limitations in the Victorian era make total state control impossible, so the state traditionally leased the land out via two systems. First, the concession lands. The governor handed massive territories to nobles and generals. They collected taxes and forced labor, keeping a tax-free estate as a bonus. For royals like Said and Ismail, nearly all their land was tax-free. They pocketed massive rent instead of paying the treasury. While technically state property, nobles had already begun inheriting and trading these fields. Privatization was already happening secretly. Ismail just writes it into law, turning a natural trend into a massive political gift to secure noble gratitude. Second, the state lands. The government leased fields directly to independent peasants and small farmers. On paper, it rewarded efficiency. Grow more food, get more land. In reality, corrupt local tax collectors didn't care about agricultural efficiency. They just leased fields to whoever paid the highest bribes, squeezing the peasants to the bone. If a farmer missed a tax payment, the state seized his land and whipped him brutally. Turning these state leases into permanent private property lets peasants farm in peace, boosting agricultural output naturally. Ismail could have seized all the land and distributed it equally to the poor, but that would trigger a noble rebellion and get him assassinated. More importantly, Egypt isn't a simple food-growing nation. It relies on economic crops like cotton. It needs large, capitalistic plantations to achieve economies of scale. If he blindly gives tiny plots to small farmers, Egypt will end up like Haiti. Peasants will stop growing economic crops that bring in foreign currency. They will just grow wheat to feed their own families. National export revenue will collapse, killing any hope of modernization. Time moves fast. October 1848, land privatization is in full swing. Propaganda agents march into the countryside, explaining the new laws to the masses. The Civil Affairs Ministry sends surveyors to map fields, register owners, and issue official land deeds. Agriculture tech experts grade the soil quality. The Civil Affairs Minister, Ismail Pasha, brings a bleak report to the throne. We have a severe bottleneck, Regent. Cairo doesn't have enough technical experts. They can map towns, but the vast rural areas are completely out of reach. Ismail frowns from his throne. Then who is mapping the rural fields and issuing the deeds? Local village chiefs, elders, and literate priests are helping our clerks collect data. Ismail Pasha answers hesitantly. Ismail looks at him. Speak freely. What is the issue? They are using their influence to cheat. The minister admits, looking ashamed. They forge measurements to steal extra fed-in for their own families. My staff is too small to stop them. The minister views this as a fatal crisis. Traditionally, losing independent farmers destroys a nation's tax base and conscription pool. The rich hoard the land, and the state hollows out. Ismail listens quietly. The game of wealth and power is turning dirty. In the East, countless dynasties collapsed because of land consolidation. In the West, it ruined Russia's elite cavalry, triggering a dark era of chaos. But Ismail doesn't care. This is the 19th century. Britain's enclosure movement proved that consolidating the land speeds up the economy, boosts crop yields, and pushes rural labor into urban factories. But Egypt lacks the factories to absorb those workers yet. Moving too fast will just create massive city slums, ruin public order, and trigger total chaos. Striking a balance is critical. Do not rush the land reform, Ismail instructs Civil Affairs Minister Ismail Pasha. Take a year or two. Map the land properly. My propaganda team will educate the farmers, and we will set up traveling courts to settle rural disputes on the spot. That will take too long, Ismail Pasha worries. Ismail remains calm. Perfection doesn't exist, Pasha. Just give any newly cleared delta land to displaced farmers for free. Their anger will vanish instantly. Meanwhile, an old retired official named Mahmud Bey is having a midlife crisis. He spent his entire career serving the royal family. In return, he received 800 fen of prime land and 200 peasant families. Absolute luxury. But Egyptian law states that when he dies, his land reverts to the state. His useless sons will inherit nothing, instantly plunging his family into poverty. Then came Ismail's reform announcement. Brilliant policy, true justice. Mahmud Bey cheers, reading a poster slapped onto a temple wall. People said Prince Ismail was benevolent and fair. It is true. He will make Egypt rich and powerful. Exactly, my lord, his manager, David, chimes in. David is a Sephardic Jew. In Egypt, Jews are banned from owning farmland, forced into low-status trades. David used his wits to become a royal manager, collecting heavy rents and running usury networks for Mahmud Bey. Mahmud Bey reads further down the poster. His face darkens instantly. This is unacceptable, he snarls. The law caps land rent at 40% of the harvest. Worse, it completely bans forced peasant labor without pay. The rule is rigid. No rent cap, no land deed, total gridlock. Ismail's strategy is pure economics. Lower rent means peasants keep more cash. When poor farmers have money, they buy local factory goods, driving industrial growth. Mahmud Bey weighs his options. He chooses privatization. Losing some rent is painful, but keeping the land and his family for generations is a massive win. Still, his greedy heart resists. Labor is a blessing for peasants, he grumbles, shaking his head. Ban forced labor and cap rents, and they will grow lazy. Egypt will starve. David smirks, stepping closer with a sneaky plan. Do not worry, my lord. These rules are just words on paper. Why? Mahmud Bey asks, confused. Your peasants are completely illiterate, David whispers. They cannot read posters. They don't know the law. How will they ever find out? Brilliant. Mahmud Bey's eyes light up. Since no one can read, he can just invent his own version of Ismail's reforms. As long as the peasants don't complain, he can do whatever he wants in the dark. Clang, clang, clang. Suddenly, a loud racket of drums and gongs echoes from the road, getting closer. Who is making that awful noise? Mahmud Bey winces, his ears hurting. Is another noble visiting me? David panics, looking out the gate. It is the new propaganda ministry. Come look, come listen. The propaganda agents shout, assembling a wooden stage in the village square. Our benevolent regent, Ismail Pasha, has passed a grand law to protect all farmers. At first, locals ignore them. Only a few lazy villagers stroll over, sitting on straw mats to watch the show. The agents pivot fast. Free cigarettes. Listen to the speech, get a free cigarette. Boom! Hundreds of peasants drop their tools and swarm the stage, eyes gleaming. The agents grin and deliver the payload. Ismail Pasha has decreed a 40% rent cap. Forced labor without pay is a crime. The golden age of the cultivator is here. The peasants leave the square, puffing happily on their free cigarettes. Unexpectedly, Mahmud Bey's tenants march straight to his villa. They wave their arms, shouting furiously, demanding an immediate rent cut. They have strength in numbers and the absolute authority of the regent backing them. Mahmud Bey shrinks back, tripping over a loose stone. He looks back to yell for David, but his manager has already sprinted 50 yards away, fleeing the angry crowd. Left completely isolated, the noble has to surrender and grant the rent cut. Filthy pests, Mahmud Bey spits, watching the propaganda team pack up their stage. His eyes flash with absolute murder, but he can't touch them. Egypt's habitable zone is a narrow strip along the Nile with bow cover. If he attacks government officials, the police will hunt him down. There is nowhere to hide but the dead desert. No way out. As he gnashes his teeth over the financial loss, David slides back into the courtyard. You dare show your face? Mahmud Bey roars, raising his horsewhip. David ducks, stepping back frantically. Wait, my lord, I found a massive loophole in the regent's decree. The whip stops. Speak fast. The law caps rent for tenants. David grins, bowing low. So, why rent the land at all? Mahmud Bey blinks. Go on. We evict the tenants, David whispers like a demon. We hire them back as landless day laborers instead. Ismail capped rent, but he forgot to set a minimum wage. We can slash their pay to pennies and force them to work even harder. Mahmud Bey bursts into laughter, giving a massive thumbs up. You Jews are terrifyingly smart. I will tell the entire household about your grand contribution. David freezes, a cold sweat breaking out across his neck. If the angry local peasants find out this was his idea, they will beat him to death. Silly. Meanwhile, back in Cairo, the morning bell rings. Time for another routine cabinet meeting. The council chamber is tense. Regent Ismail sits with his top ministers. Civil Affairs Minister Ismail Pasha speaks first. He rubs his temples and sighs deeply. To bypass the new rent caps, landlords are evicting tenants. They are switching to a wage system. Unemployment is skyrocketing. Agriculture Minister Fazil Pasha scoffs. He waves his hand dismissively. What is wrong with wages? Large consolidated farms make it much easier to use modern European machinery. We can grow economic crops faster. Ismail Pasha slams his fist on the table. This isn't economics, Fazil. It is a political crisis. Starving, landless peasants are drifting through the country. You are planting the seeds of a massive rebellion. Fazil Pasha shrugs stubbornly. We spend fortunes arming the military. Why fear lazy peasants? Enough. Ismail snaps. The two ministers shut up instantly. Ismail leans forward. If the peasants are losing their fields, we will hire them ourselves. Work relief. Work relief? Fazil and Ismail stare at the regent, utterly confused. Another wild idea from the young prince. Ismail delivers the breakdown. We abolish the old, unpaid forced labor system. We hire the unemployed to build massive public works instead. The old system was a total mess. Every peasant had to leave their fields to dig canals and build dams for free. It ruined agricultural production. Egypt's excellent climate allows 3 harvests a year on irrigated soil. Farmers are always busy. Sucking them into forced labor at any season destroys crop yields. Worse, greedy overseers work them to death. Mortality rates were horrific. Peasants even had to bring their own tools and food. Total exploitation. Work relief changes the game. First, it doesn't touch active farmers. It recruits landless drifters and poor city beggars. Zero impact on agricultural output. Second, it builds a permanent, highly experienced construction corps. Efficiency skyrockets. Most importantly, paying wages puts cash into poor pockets. They spend it, revitalizing the local economy. A flawless plan. Fazil and Ismail nod in agreement. However, one voice cuts through. I oppose this work relief scheme. It is Finance Minister Bazi Bey. His face is a mask of pure agony. He looks terrified. Ismail frowns. Why oppose it, Bazi Bey? The other ministers glare at the treasurer. Bazi Bey signs to his secretary. A heavy leather booklet is placed before Ismail. Work relief sounds magnificent, Regent. But hired workers demand hard cash. Our treasury cannot afford a single extra piaster. Ismail narrows his eyes. I took over the factories and slashed industrial subsidies. Why is the treasury still bone dry? Bazi Bey grumbles internally. Our finances improve slightly, yes. But the future looks grim. Why grim? Ismail flips open the financial ledger. Bazi Bey drops a bombshell. With your land privatization laws, collecting taxes will become a nightmare. Before, if a noble missed a tax, we seized the land. Now, they will use your new property laws as a shield. The other two ministers nod slowly. They agree. Protect private property with law, and the bureaucracy loses its grip. The peasants will become arrogant and ungovernable. Ismail bursts into laughter. He looks at his anxious treasurer. Private property is sacred, yes. It means we cannot seize land via arbitrary executive orders. But if they refuse to pay taxes, we sue them in court and auction their land legally. Bazi Bey stammers. But Egypt lacks such a law. Then we write it today. Ismail grins coldly. If anyone ducks their land tax for more than 6 quarters, the tax bureau seizes the estate and sells it at a public auction to cover the debt. Land belongs to the nobles, but legislation belongs to the regent. Interpretation of the law remains absolute. Brilliant. Pure genius. The 3 ministers chorus. Still, the ledger doesn't lie. Egypt's financial situation is bleak. Ismail studies the math. Annual revenue hovers around 3 million Egyptian pounds. That is only 3/4 of what they pulled in before the disastrous Second Ottoman War. The breakdown: 1. 5 million from land taxes, 500 from poll taxes, 300 from customs and consumer tariffs. The remaining 700,000 comes from state monopolies and minor fees on fishing or shops. 1 Egyptian pound matches 1 British pound. In Eastern terms, that is 4 taels of pure silver. Egypt draws 12 million taels of silver annually. By comparison, the massive King dynasty in the East pulls in 40 million. Think about that. Egypt has only 4 million locals, plus 2 million in Sudan, 6 million people total. The King dynasty rules 400 million souls. Egypt's taxation efficiency is terrifyingly high. A standard feudal government would be swimming in gold, but a modernizing state spends fortunes. The expenses are insane. The military and navy gobble up 1-2 million pounds every year. Public works used to cost 500,000 alongside factory subsidies. Ismail cut the subsidies, but paying wages for work relief consumes the exact same 500,000 pounds. Zero net savings, civil administration, royal court expenses, and Bared's massive propaganda engine devour another 800,000 pounds. Worse, the annual tribute to the Ottoman Sultan costs 400,000 pounds. Ibrahim Pasha never paid a single cent while his father was senile, but now Ismail must handle it. On top of that, the dead rulers left Ismail a mountain of internal debt. 2.5 million pounds, plus heavy interest. Luckily, it is internal debt. No European powers will march in with bayonets to demand cash. Ismail can stall. He can even default. But if he defaults, local Egyptians will never buy government bonds again. Total loss of trust. Ismail rubs his temples, feeling a headache coming. Can our treasury handle any major operations under these conditions, Minister? Bazi Bey shakes his head. You see the math, Regent. Every single penny is spent. If we pay the Sultan, we face a deficit. Any more spending will break the machine. How do we fix this? Ismail asks humbly. Bazi Bey is a veteran. He knows the gears. Only 2 paths exist, Master, Bazi Bey says slowly. Increase revenue or slash spending.